this on? No? Yes. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your patience. My name is Husnaa, and I'll be hosting this event tonight. I would like to thank the SACS program for arts innovation, the Fund for Feminist Projects at Kelly Writers House, and I'd like to thank the people tuning in on the YouTube. We have a secret surprise book. Everybody gets a free book. Wow. Yeah. So we're excited about that.
You can clap for me. I love a free book. Oh, yeah.
Sure. The anthology, Halal, if you hear me. And I want to talk just briefly about why I chose Safia and Angel to come here and why I paired them together. I have deep admiration for their friendship and really what they have contributed to really community of Black and BIPOC writers, and look to them as kind of examples of what community and commitment to community looks like. And originally conceived of this series as focusing on millennial Black Muslim writers, thinking about identity. I'll read their official bios, and this is on the internet as well. Safia Elhillo is the author of The January Children, University of Nebraska Press 2017, which received the Sillerman First Book Prize for African Poets and an Arab American Book Award, Girls That Never Die, One World, Random House 2021, and the novel and verse, Home Is Not a Country, Make Me a World, Random House 2021. With Fatimah Asghar, she is co-editor of the anthology, Halal, If You Hear Me, Haymarket Books 2019. Sudanese by way of Washington, D.C., Safiya received the 2015 Brunel International African Poetry Prize and was listed in Forbes Africa's 2018 30 Under 30. Her work has been translated into several languages, and her commissions include Under Armour, Cuyana, and the Bavarian State Ballet. In 2018, she was awarded a Ruth, Lilly, and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation. Safiya is currently a Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford University and lives in Oakland. And Angel Nafis is the author of Black Girl Mansion, Redbird Press, New School Poetics 2012. She earned her BA at Hunter College and her MFA in poetry at Warren Wilson College. Her work has appeared in the Breakbeats Poets Anthology, The Rumpus, Poetry Magazine, BuzzFeed Reader, and elsewhere. Nafis is a Cave Canem Fellow, the recipient of a Malay Colony residency, an Urban Word NYC mentor, and the founder and curator of the Greenlight Bookstore Poetry Salon. In 2011, she represented NYC at both the Women of the World Poetry Slam and the National Poetry Slam. She is half of the Odes for You tour with poet, musician, and visual artist Shira Ehrlichman, and with poet Morgan Parker. She runs the Other Black Girl Collective, an internationally touring Black feminist poetry duo. Facilitating writing workshops and reading poems globally, she lives in Brooklyn. In 2016, Nafis was a recipient of the Ruth, Lilly, and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation. And in 2017, she was awarded a Creative Writing Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts. So we'll have a reading from Safiya, a reading from Angel, a little bit of a kind of guided discussion, and then some audience questions. Cool.
Yay. Everybody clap for Safiya!
Hi, everyone.
Hi, babe.
It's good to be here. It's also so deeply strange to be in the world again. So thank you for being here. What a treat to be in the world with Angel, who it's only a matter of seconds before I collapse into sobs. It's been a very
Here are some poems. Modern Sudanese poetry.
My husband works his fingers into the knot muscled against my spine, and my dead stay dead. My hair a knotted cursive language, my ligature, my grief barely literate, my amulets knotted around my neck and wrists, my language, cursive and silent, glottal and knotted and scarring the cheeks of my dead, adorning the hair of my dead, tallow in their braided hair. I read the books in translation. Where is the poem? And circle every word I know. Acacia, lupin, sandalwood, and ash. They ululate my dead. They squat like brides over clay pots of smoke, a yoke suspended in each open eye. And some, in truth, are not dead, my dead, and I am who is lost, who is not counted among the living. The poem is not owed me. I was wed in all the colors of my dead, the reddening, the borrowed gold. I wrote the poem in translation. I wrote the poem in the loophole. I wrote the poem in cursive. I snarled it. I picked apart the threads and wove a shroud. I was wed in it. I unfastened. I broke my fast with apricots, furred like the ears of my dead. I looked laterally for ancestors. I descended left and right. I read the book in Arabic, knew each letter and its sound, and did not recognize the words for tallow, for ululate, my dead, my languages, my ligatures, smoke in my loosened hair. Breath control is really hard with a mask on.
So hard.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm gonna huff and puff my way through a few more poems. Final weeks, 1990. Hours before, the night outside is black as my grandmother's hair, its newborn moon in Sagittarius. And in the Maryland house, my mother is 23 behind a winning hand of cards as the water darkens the length of her skirt. December now, and friends still call her al-arus, the bride, 11 months married and the shock of it not yet settled behind her eyes. Morning and the baby has not come. Milky winter sun in Sagittarius. I should mention there was a husband, 27. I can hardly imagine it, a boy that age, my father. I cannot picture him in the room, though his work for years to come will absorb him into countries that smell of blood. Maybe he is in the room now, not yet a specter. I sketch him in, but do not know where to put him. Maybe in the corner, back rigid against the white wall. I cannot imagine them ever touching. I smudge him out, correct the still wet scene. He is outside, long-limbed in a hard plastic chair. My mother called him Jack, and this is my only proof they were in love. My mother is almost my mother now, darker color of the noontime sun. In the waiting room, I should also place my grandparents, elegant in that old, over-formal way of immigrants. My grandfather's shirt never without a collar, lush neatness of the afro against his head. My grandmother could pass for a film star, hair black and feathered down her back, any suggestion of curl or coil since burnt away and set every morning in hot rollers. Her eyebrows tattooed as they have been all my life, blue-black parentheses. Both of them older than the independent state of the Sudan. My grandmother 13 years its senior. My grandfather a January child of unknown birthday, though the colonial offices recorded as 26 years before his country is born. They are placid companions. Their courtship cooled amicably into a sort of siblinghood, and I have never seen them touch, so I cannot imagine it now. He paces the cool length of the hallway. 1 hour and 39 minutes past noon, that final diluvian push, and I am outside, full head of wet hair, pomegranate creature cawing that little animal sound, pronounced a girl and named for a dead great aunt, the birth certificate dated and signed in ink. Back home, I would have been known by my first two names, mine and my father's, Safia Yaqub, the surname rarely used, but in the new country, the paper demands a patronym. Anglicized, the L becomes a looser L. Hello, meaning sweet, strange, unserious allonym of that first great-grandfather, and crowded together on a single line, marked first name, our names, mine and his, Safia Yaqub, little echo of that forgotten epithet, that once loved man, of Jack. And though I am not named for my mother, we match. Safa, noun form of my adjective, our shared first syllable, closest I have ever seen them, him and her, almost touching. Tony Soprano's tender machismo. I know him. 3 buttons undone down the baobab chest, quiet humility of the wisping hairline. I watch him cup a face in his great paw to kiss a cheek, exact manners of my first beloved men, sturdy and broken-hearted as cattle, my uncles, watches matting the thick hair of their left arms, brother-aged and fathering into my empty spaces. My father was gone, and into that great room they poured, big-shouldered boys, hot streak of anger at each center. I was a child wealthy in shoulders to climb, swung from arm to heavy arm, tender booming of my name in that chorus of approving mouths, gifts shining and breakable in their hands, fairy science of the music box, tiny chime of each earring, bracelets narrow and silver as their silent, injured wives. I am their smart girl, and they are proud. I watch him, my uncle who is not mine, 13 years after the show stops airing, and I love him like the child forgetting her abdicated father. He smiles like I delight him. My love justifies his every crime. I pretended not to hear how they talked about bitches and gold diggers, the news stories with hurt girls naming their injuries, consensus that they are lying, that they must have been asking for it. I'm home from college and stepping into their amber scent of cologne and old sweat, their wounded animal smell, their every tender misogyny, for a quick kiss on the crown of my head. Now their girlfriends are my age, now younger, and now the news about the famous predator floods the screen, and when one uncle changes the channel and mutters about a setup, I watch the flood take that room of piecemeal fathers, where I've kept them installed for years. Its debris includes the stories I kept quiet, everything that was done to me that I will not tell them, includes every word tossed about to name women, how we all thought they didn't mean me. And this last poem is called From My Friends in Reply to a Question, and it's after David Ignatel. I'm okay. And, of course, I'm not. But I go through the motions. I wake up to the alarm's howl, even when the word in my body is no. I dress in livid colors. I blacken the hairs of each eyebrow. I bake and braise and pickle. I write and read and lose hours to the blur of the television. I sit for hours in the bath, my skin puckering. I don't know if I'll ever go home again. I don't know who I've seen for the last time. The Arabic comes back to me in streaks of paint, verb forms and vocabularies I may never again have occasion to use. My days smudge into one another, and it's not that I am afraid. It's as if I am watching it all happen below, and I am somewhere above the room, wondering if the rice is burning. I am somewhere above the room, watching my new aches, watching the news as if I am reading it in a novel. I look up the names of people I knew in childhood, learn their new and angular faces, their faraway lives. My grandfather pixelates into a smile, and I work my creaking muscles to replicate it. I do not ask if we will ever meet again. I do not ask him to read to me, or for anything that will make me long. I dull it with sugar and oil, with cooking shows, with sleep. I sleep 12 hours each night, and in my dreams I am fleeing a war. In my dreams I am touching the faces of my friends. We are each one of us touching, and even in the dream we are afraid. Thank you.
Can we clap again for Safia? Is it too soon? My pal. How are you guys? Assalamu alaikum. It's so good to see you and be seen. I am not good. I'm happy to be here, but man, it is blessed and depressed is the constant yo-yo I'm on. So just bear with me, give me grace, forgive me. I'm gonna read some things that make me joyful to say, like just words that feel good in my mouth. And then I'm gonna read some things that are strange to me, strange to say. They're newer. It's you know, it's been a long 2 years, and a lot of the things that I have made surprise me, and I don't really recognize it, but it also feels familiar and exciting. And this is only the second time I've read in person in 2 years. I know, please, I'm so happy to see you. And this is the first time I've read somewhere that I don't also teach there. So this is, I feel back again, like returned to the world in some weird way. I'm gonna take off my mask.
Woo!
I just feel like my face is the part. You know what I'm saying?
Also, having
I'm so
regular
sorry.
mask on, I don't recommend it.
Girl, I saw you. I was like, that looks like pure CO2 that you are fucking
out of breath.
blowing into your mouth. You're like lightheaded. I'll put it back on once I'm done, but there's no way. I can't do it. Okay, so I have this afro, but I didn't at one point, and in my heart, I'm just a bald gay person. So this is a poem about my barber, who, even though I no longer get my haircut, I feel like once you have your person, you're like, that's my person. Like, I haven't gotten braids like 3 years, but I like have my braider who I will return to. So this is my ode to my barber, who's like so wonderful, so fine, so like lovely to me. And I thought when I cut all my hair off, I thought I would lose that like rare connection you have with the person who maintains your hair. But I was like, oh, the person who takes your hair away is also you have a thing with him too. Anyway, no surprise to anybody, I wrote a poem, so. He cuts hair at this barbershop on Flatbush called Creations, spelled with a K. So this is called King of Creations. Onlyest man who lays hands on me. Pointer finger pad between my eyes, pinky knuckle cool on cheekbone, god of precision, blade at my throat. For a half hour you love me this way. Together, we discover what I got from my folks. Widow's peak, dandruff, hair growing fast in concentric O's. Clint, so damn beautiful I can count on one hand the times I've looked directly in your face for fear I might never come back. You knower of me. To get right, I come to you. When I'm finna interview, when I'm finna banquet or party, when I must stunt, I come to you. It is mostly you, but not always. After all, you gotta eat too, so sometimes it's Percival, face like stones except when he's smiling. Sometimes it's Junior who sings the whole time he lines up the crown. No matter how soft my body, or how many eyes find it and peel when I walk in the shop. In the chair, I am of them. Not brother, not sister. When he wields the razor and takes me low, it's like when a woman gets close to the mirror to slide the lipstick on slow, draws a line so perfect, she cuts her own self from the clay. Woo! I had to change the name because I published it. I didn't want him to think like I'm trying to get down. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm gay, but like I love you. You know what I mean? Like that's just a poem, bro. So but I hope this is like, I don't know. I know you guys are filming this. I said his name for real on accident. So let's hope he doesn't trace that paper trail. He's got a busy life. Don't worry. I found him on Instagram, and he has a whole. He's like an influencer. I shared it with Safia. And I know that sounds like whatever, but he will be like in an igloo, like he in Alaska, like that kind where I'm like, should I be a barber? Like, what's the disconnect? Your whole situation is I need to elevate to it. Okay, I'm turning a corner. I'm gonna read this poem. I have not read it. It's about my dad. I have not read it since my dad passed. I have only been able to like say dad in the last year. I just like couldn't even say it. I couldn't even I didn't even like people saying dad, like it to me. They could talk about their dads, but it was like, it felt like turning all the fucking lights on, you know what I mean, when you just wake up or something. But in the last year or so, it's been such a gift, like, not even gift, just like an enormous relief to feel not just like okay to talk about him, but to feel like excited to talk about him again. And I also started to realize that I was starting to forget things. And I was like, oh shit, well that's not gonna work. I'm gonna have to talk about this dude because I can't bear to think that the distance I'm taking from speaking about him is creating fog. So I'm gonna read this poem that I wrote before he passed away. And it's about him passing away. Ode to Voicemail, which I hate, by the way. I don't like I can't. There's like right now, there's like 300 voicemails unchecked on my phone. So, Ode to Voicemail. You dark hand that reaches starch through hot wire to press against my neck. Sterile nurse that tells me how many days, weeks, months since my last visit to witness what in my unyielding buzz I have missed. Place I avoid. Purgatory of all my familiars. I do not hate you, but want to not know so completely who I am away from, or what part of myself I have left to collect dust. Your names are Debt Recovery, Sally Mae, now Navient, by the way, Hospital Results, and Are You On Your Way? Still, even the messages I don't want tell me who I am. Hi, Angel. Hello, Angel. Greetings. This is Miss Nafis. My name hugged up against a salutation. Your best gift, though, remains the way you pull my dad's voice, taut with eternity's hands. Forever, I have the fruit. Salam alaikum, Nafis. Just checking on my littlest one. And two, when he believes he's hung up or doesn't know he's called at all, the sounds of him, casual and kind, laughing. A postal worker, is that a waiter he's talking to? A postal worker laughing and calling him sir. Praise, infinity, the plain sounds of him living and living. So this thing I'm working on now, which it's kind of been freeing to make art. How many of you make art things of any variety? Okay, excellent. Yay for us. You know, truly uphill, but we're doing it. How weird is it making things now? A scale of 1 to so weird. So fucking, like, it's fine, but it's also more than ever, I'm like, what is this? What is this? Mostly because, like, I think I rely a lot on, like, instinct, like, intuition stuff to make things. I mean, of course, I've been a million years of school, so I rely on that sometimes too, but a lot of poetry stuff I feel like comes, like, from a deep, like, listening place. And my listening is so crazy now because they're like, I'm home all the time. So it's like so skewed. It's like a fucking echo chamber. So I started reaching across medium limitations and I started like making visual verse. And when my dad passed, me and my sister, when we had to go clear out his estate, we had to clean out his house, the basement, which my dad is like a shitty archivist. There's not a thing he throws away. And it's like to my delight and to my horror as I like carry, decades and decades old Muhammad Speaks newspapers from the 70s up the steps, and it's like so old that I like blow and it's like disintegrating. I'm trying to protect it. Anyways, I was using I was just touching all that stuff. I felt so awake and like activated, and I hadn't felt that way since since having friends and seeing them. And I was like, these are my friends now. So I started making something that is, it's all of my dad's journals from when he converted to Islam. And it's his notes of him. He basically learned to read. He knew how to read sketchily, but he learned to like, when you read to read a stop sign so you know where you're going is different than when you're reading to spend time with a story. It's just like totally different. So he learned to read from the Quran. And so his notebooks are basically English to English translations of the Quran. It's like the Quran, and it's him figuring out what it means. And so I've been engaging with those texts and essentially making a very nonlinear verse biography of my dad. So I'm gonna read some of that stuff, if that's okay. Oh, it's gonna sound so weird because I've not said this stuff. So if I sound crazy, apology. Okay. My daddy had a billion names, so why wouldn't I? He's Abdullah, Dul, Nafis, Doc, the doctor, Sheikh, Minister, Brother Minister Nafis, Abdul, Alfonso, 6X, Alfonso, Booby, Boo, is that you? Oh, this is in vignettes, so if I stop, that's like what's happening. And a little backstory for this next like clip, they're in vignettes. This next vignette, when my dad converted, I don't know how many of you, maybe conversion's not the best analogy for this. So, when you're like kind of doing dirty and you like don't want to see your mom because you're like, let me just get my shit together before I talk to you. You know what I mean? So he had like an era of that. So it was like, he was like, let me deeply cleanse and get my shit together before I speak to you. And the first time they saw each other was on Fifth Avenue, Manhattan, middle of the day, busy day, not planned. They were just both walking towards each other. And he recognized her, and she almost didn't recognize him at first because he looked so different post-conversion, post-sobriety, post-my mom, post. It had been years since he'd seen his mother, and even if he hadn't been radiant, ensconced so in the buttered sun of sober skin, she would have known him anywhere. He was her firstborn son, and in any state, she was crazy about him. Boo! Is that you? Whatever you doing, keep doing it. And he would. For nearly 5 more decades, he would keep doing it. Making salat and on his deen, selling Muhammad Speaks on the Ave, giving dower, loving the ladies so sweet they love Allah too, making the babies and loving the ladies and leaving the babies and making and loving and leaving them all. Never a cigarette, not one, ever again, no narcotics and not one sip, ever again. His deen knows he's clean, cold turkey and always on the move. Is it once an Alfonso, always an Alfonso? Or is it that there's only really one, making all the sons Alfonso, catch a tiger by his toe, name like a star's glow, gone by the time you know it's glorious. Now, if his mother hadn't been so hot with his father, he would have been named James. Alfonso. 5 different women, some sour, some not, some aged, some rot. 8 children all told, some south, some east, some in between. 3 of them girl things, honeys, angels, torn yarn womb, no trouble for miles, daughters. But 5 of them were his sons, and his sons were his mischief. But 5 of them are his sons, and his sons are his mischief. America, mind your son's eyes, part gray, part brown, part gray. Whatever James did to Ellie, it was enough to make her name their son Alfonso. A pretty name for a pretty boy from a long line of pretty boys. Ellie named him for her big brother, who played the horn and was named after their father, who died on a bar floor and was the son of a black man that lived as a white man whose own father owned him. Now, what's more American than that? Ellie Pearl Strother was a passing gal from a long line of passing gals. Her people were from good stock. She married a dark man with white teeth named James, who drove a big car in a cement city named after an island. She named him Alfonso because fuck James. She named him Alfonso because her brother was king. She did what she did, and who could stop her? She was high yellow and unbroken mare's braid in her chest. My daddy has 2 birthdays, hung apart by 2 days, dilated as pupils. I observe them both. I'll read these next 2 and then be done. So my dad, before he converted, his name was Alfonso, as you may have guessed from me saying Alfonso 3,000 times. And it's a namesake name. So his uncle, who was a horn player in Queens, his name was Alfonso, and then his grandfather, his uncle's dad, was also named Alfonso, so on and so on and so on. And all of the Alfonsos have I don't know if it's like what it is, if it's the name or what, but they all sort of step in a similar legacy. They're all sort of this like very charismatic, short, red-skinned, yellow-skinned men with like kaleidoscope-colored eyes who are like just running through women and having children. And my dad is the only one who attempted to break that cycle. And it's, whether he did or not, I guess the book is figuring that out. Anyway, I have a bunch of poems, and I couldn't figure out, there was no way to distinguish them, the Alfonsos, from each other. If I'm trying to tell this history, there was no way to, like, if Alfonso, like 1 or 2, it just sounded silly. So then I was like, oh wait, who cares? They're the same. It's the mythos. It's like, maybe I'm an Alfonso. Like, like that fuck shit gene is like, that's that. Alfonso, take 1. Adrena had left him because he wasn't doing right. Running with women and ripping here to there, he got away with because his father would tell other white men, don't mess. He was spoiled. One of the girls he was running with told, when Alfonso come back to town, he gonna kill you. You know the way women are. So Alfonso walks into the bar, and before he could say boo, blew his brains out. Alfonso, take 2. The big thing back then was to go out to the bars and nightclubs, especially on the weekends. Ellie's brother was King Alfonso, and so by extension, the band and the whole Copa City belonged to the Strothers of Jamaica, Queens. Ellie would say, boo, go on with your uncle. And they'd get all dressed up and go hear the 12-piece band play. But you know a woman, suspicious. She knows when you've got another woman, and just so happened he left number in his back pocket while he slept face down on his stomach. She took a barber's razor and cut his back wide open. That's how a woman is. You can't cut her wrong, Jack. She cut him right down his back. That's it. Thank you all so much. Thank you for letting me borrow this. Okay.
Thank you. Can we hear a little bit about performance and Writing performance, I know you have like some competition, like slam background. How would you?
Me and Safiya were just sort of talking about this on the way here. Like, this is my boo, my homie, obviously. And we don't really talk about poems. It's like, really, we just send links to outfits to each other. Like, look at these. I sent her a side table, ceramic side table I just got. And I was like, look, this.
And as we grow older, it's now like home goods.
So on the way up, I was like, oh, I'm so excited to read with you. I'm so excited to be with you. I was like, oh, by the way, like, this may not be good. Like, I haven't spoken a thing in a year. And Safia was like, yeah, it's like a muscle. So I think I will say that first and foremost, it is a muscle. And if you don't use it, you lose it. And so I'm at my best. Unfortunately, I'm at my best when I'm on tour. Because I'm doing it every night, and I just am able, you know, when you're like, nervousness like sucks, obviously, and the only way I find to like escape it is to like lean into experience. So if you've done something enough, I just try to like lean into having done it, and then your seasonedness, whatever that is, can rise to the top. And then that beautiful pocket of like improvisation like is able to flourish. It's actually like kind of repetitious behavior allows actually for the surprise thing to happen. So I would say the biggest difference between or maybe the biggest similarity between writing on the page and reading poems is that they are both benefited tremendously by the more you do it, the more you return to it. It's better always, easier, more natural, less goofy feeling always.
Yeah. It this is maybe.
Can you guys hear me? By the way, I assume you can. So yes. Sorry.
Yeah. No. I hope y'all would have said something if you couldn't hear us this whole time. It's too late now. But, this is, I think, the second time in going on 3 years that I've touched a microphone, which obviously is the longest I've been since I started performing. And I was talking to Angel about this while we were like lost trying to find this venue earlier, but it is a muscle, and it is not, I am not a performer by nature. So it is entirely a constructed muscle for me. I had the benefit of starting to build that muscle as a young person, so I kind of never again had to think about the fact that I am not like a performer by nature. But even like, for example, when I was reading just now, I've never read with a mask on. And some things over the years, like Angel was saying, just because of them being drilled into me first by coaches and then by myself, things like breath control, I haven't thought about the term breath control in 15 years, maybe, you know? And certain things happen in your body, like physical sensations, that to me are often indicators of an emotion. Like if I'm short of breath, that makes my brain think I'm nervous. I was not actually nervous. I just was short of breath because I'm wearing a mask and like inhaling my own poetry carbon monoxide. And so there was a moment where my brain was like, oh no, I'm nervous. And then I had to like step in with my coach voice and be like, you're not nervous, you're just not speaking from your diaphragm. And then again, I haven't said diaphragm to myself since like 2008, you know, but here I was being my own slam coach, being like, set your feet and speak from your diaphragm. And I haven't thought about that stuff in so long. And I think I took my fluency for granted, and I took my fluency for instinct rather than education. And I had to like, this was a helpful reminder to like remember the things that someone took the time to teach me. I did not come to this on my own. So yeah, it's weird. I'm like out of shape, and it's also very
So out of shape.
It's like so personal to hear the poems out loud, you know?
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't feel good, I have to say. Like, unless you, like, because there is an element where you're like, that's how it sounds? You know what I mean?
Well, it's not even about
That's
how
what
that,
it is?
it's like a little bit, like, I can almost keep my distance from the material like one last step until I hear it in my own voice. And a thing that's happened kind of in the past couple years that coincided with just like, I haven't been outside since 1967. But like, I at first wasn't writing at all, because I think writing poetry involves like radical presence, and I was trying to be absent. And you know, so I've just been like taking baths and reading novels and like watching reality television. But when I came back to writing poetry, the material that I find myself interested in these days just is a little bit more of my actual business than I'm used to engaging with in poetry. But I had this kind of incubation period where I was just like making these poems in my apartment, and like no one was really seeing them in a way that made me realize that people were maybe going to see these poems if I put them somewhere. And it is a very naked feeling to be like talking about your business and saying it with your real voice and not just like typed words on a screen or whatever. So a little, I'm like feeling like a baby poet again a little bit, which is
Very.
You know, such a gift really, and also so embarrassing.
That's our official answer.
Yes.
It's embarrassing.
Do you find a difference in maybe writing like during this long pandemic experience than
Oh my God.
previously, like in terms of process?
I mean, I'm hanging on by a thriggity thread, if that's what you mean. I really mean it. Like, I am so happy to be here. I'm like also I should say like I don't have a ton of experience with like depression. So
Oh, babe, welcome.
Listen.
Sucks here.
I was like, is this what everyone's been talking about? What the hell? Oh my God, I need like maternity leave book for depression. What the fuck? It's bad, and it makes everything so bad, even the good stuff. And I'm not used to that, and I'm actually like, I'm kind of by nature like a serial optimist, and so and I really enjoy being myself. And it has been very uncomfortable to feel robbed of those particular qualities or strengths, because it has left me with no delusions. No delusions. And so writing is a delusionless place, you know, good writing. And I think it's what you're saying. It's like you know, we've been in a suspended time of like precarity and false promises and isolation and the disintegration, the very aggressive disintegration of like several fucking systems before our eyes. Like, we're at the crossroads of like 3 movements. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, it feels too hot. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I sit down and I'm like, to write, and it feels like it feels so loud, and I feel so goose fleshed, you know? And so making during this time, writing during this time is unlike any other making I've ever done. And I really have to disabuse myself of like any typical measuring sticks of like progress or quality, or like, because I don't know what it is. And in fact, I don't know what the world is. And so my uncertainty and questions about the world always show up in my work, and it's a hard time to try to be sussing all of that. But it also feels weirdly fertile, like really freeing, and kind of like, well, I can't make it worse. You know what I mean? Or like, you know, on the keyboard just seeing what's up. I feel I'm in a very like research mode, and I think it's because I miss people, and so I'm like delving to like steep in stories and facts and steep in people, basically. And my body, as it's metabolizing, I'm writing. So I don't know if that answers the question. It's not great, but it is what it is. And I'm okay. I'm okay to like take a L emotionally while I leap creatively in the sanctity and like the safeness of like my home and like my community, my friends who I feel like sharing. We're kind of sharing in this kind of moment of like, I feel like everyone I know is making something that is, they're like, you know, and it's like actively on contract, and they're like,
missing a deadline as we speak, babe.
Yeah, you know, it's a mystery to me. It's a mystery to me.
Yeah, for a while, those first couple months where I like was telling myself like, in like a couple more weeks, this will all be over. So during that time, I was like, I'm not gonna write no poetry. I don't want to make a record of this time. And so maybe left to my own devices, I would still have not written a poem going into year 3. But in August of 2020, my friend Halal asked me to do a 30-30. Well, I guess it was a 31-31 because of August.
So violent. What a violent ask.
Yeah, which, first of all, I've never finished a 30-30 in my life. I write one poem every, like, year and a half. But I was like, honestly, I'm not doing anything else. I also was doing Nicole Seeley's thing where I was reading a book of poems a day for the month of August. I was just like, after kind of not engaging with poetry for maybe 3 to 4 months because it made me miss my life too much, I then kind of just went into the deep end where I was reading a book of poems a day in the morning and then writing a poem in the evening. And there were a couple, I think just like how unfamiliar the circumstance was actually helped me in this, because in reaching for the familiar, I was only being disappointed by how unlike the version of my life I was used to everything was. And so really the only way anything was going to get done was by leaning into like the brand new, which is you know, again, never really tried at a 30-30 before. By like day 2, I'm like, you all have fun. I got my one poem for the year. Happy April or whatever. With this, I was like, okay, I really love Hala's poems, and it was a treat to have a poem from her in my inbox every day. She's very good at what she does. So I was like, let me not be
setup.
Yeah, it was a setup. But also I was like, let me not disrespect this really good poet by sending her some bullshit. And so then I had to try, and it gave me something to focus my energy into, whereas all my energy for the like months before that had been focused into like dissociated new ways. And so I was like, this is it, kind of a thing that used to help me in editing started to help me in generating, where usually when in the early drafts of editing a poem, I will imagine sending it to someone that I love, and then I can almost like see it through a version of their eyes, and then that'll help me catch stuff that my regular eyes won't catch. So it was like this, but from square one, where I was like, let me write a poem that I would not be embarrassed to send to Hala, and so I'm gonna like be thoughtful and give it time. And then the Seeley challenge of it all is that I would read a book of poems in the morning and pull like a word from the book, a prompt, a form, a something, and that would help guide the poem in the evening, so it didn't feel like I was sitting down to 31 empty pages. And it did really, I mean, first, like, don't get me wrong, I've not written a poem since, but also that's 31 fucking poems. That's more poems than I've like cumulatively written in my life probably. It helped me get my sea legs back, where I think I was turning writing poems like into this boogeyman where I was like, oh no, like I'm never gonna do this again. My life is like irreversibly changed, and the poetry belongs to the old version of my life. But it was fine, you know. A lot of those poems I quite like. I also was working on a manuscript at the time that I had just been kicking my ass for years, and a lot of those poems ended up in the manuscript. They replaced a lot of the poems that I thought were like for the book, that were actually like muddying the book, and introducing these things that I thought were just like loosies actually let some air into the book where it wasn't so like working hard to prove that it had a theme. And so it worked out for the best. So I guess this is my my PSA that I've
Safia's
now
like,
come around to 30-30.
You're like, unfortunately, I wrote 30 poems and I recommend it to you.
Yeah, unfortunately, like really hate to be that person.
Bad news,
yeah.
go write 30 poems.
Unfortunately, writing 30 poems is the way. No one is more mad about it than me, but here we are.
Does the poet have a responsibility, maybe to themselves or the world?
Ruh-roh.
I'm thinking, or what I wrote anyway. Audre Lorde quoting June Jordan. And she says, June Jordan once said something which is just wonderful. I'm paraphrasing her, that her function as a poet was to make the revolution irresistible. Well, okay, that is the function of us all as creative artists, to make the truth as we see it irresistible. So I'm stuck, like, I've heard that Jordan quote before. I hadn't heard Lord like talking about it, but I'm stuck on the word like truth and the specificity of like a truth or your truth and revolution.
Yeah. That's, by the way, a lovely question.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that question. That question's amazing, and June Jordan's obviously amazing. Am I amazing? No, like, you know, I just don't. It sounds silly, but I just don't
Resonate.
No, I do. I really do resonate. I was gonna say that I don't. I find, like, I can feel when my poems. You know, when you're like making something and you like taste it and you're like, you know, you're like, I mean, this is fine, but like, I won't get seconds if I keep it this way. You know what I'm saying? I feel like, and then you just put some salt and it's like better and better. I feel like the truth is salt of poetry. So it's like, and it's like, this is like, I'm not lying, but am I telling the truthiest truth of this thing? And then I like put a little, taste it. And so I don't know if it's a responsibility is probably the word I'm struggling with the most in that framing, because I'm irresponsible. And so I'll let that sit there. I'll let that hang out there. I'm an irresponsible gal. But I do feel like my duty or my character as a writer and as a person is dependent upon my insistence on reality. What is the truth? And since I'm speaking so much about depression, I have realized something that is a symptom of my depression is delusion. It's like a grand delusion about myself, where I'm like the villain of a play that I ended up in. You know what I mean? I'm like, how am I the worst person? Like, how did this happen? And that's like deluded, because like I could not possibly be the worst. You know what I mean?
Couldn't if you tried.
Come on. Maybe like the 630th worst. But there's no way. You know what I mean? Like I
Not
think
even
about
top
it. Come on,
thousands.
my dude. And I like, you know, in my moments where I have some reprieve and like the sun opens up, I catch a whiff of the truth, and I'm like, oh shit. Not only am I not the worst, I might be closer to the other side. I might be kind of fresh. And so I try to free myself from depression by freeing myself. I ask myself in daily, like if I'm brushing my teeth or if I'm going to open an email or any task that I'm doing, I say like, is this going to fortify my delusion? Is about myself? Or is this going to fortify the truth? Is it going to help me pierce the veil of this deep fucking fog that I'm in? Where, you know, the truth is my sanctuary, no matter how dark it is, you know, and that there's nothing wrong with whatever is true. Whatever is true is just true. And so I think in poems, I run towards it. And I know that if I can run towards the truth, even if it stings, or even if I'm alarmed by it, or even if I feel outmatched by that truth, I know that the poem will take the L if I run from it. The poem will be not as good as it can be. It will be maybe fine, maybe publishable, but I will grow tired of reading it. I won't want to say it. I'll be bummed when people are like, I love that poem of yours. I'll feel a little bummed that that's the one they love, like, because I know. And so I think always running towards not the truth that I know, but the truth that's exactly on the other side of the shit that I know is the one I try to run towards in poems. I feel that is my thing. That's my what I hope, whether or not something that I do or not. What say you, responsible one of the two of us?
I don't know. Look, I think
You're
before,
you're absolutely don't even try. I see you about to say you're not the one. You're the one.
I'm like responsible in that, like, there's always like soap in my house, you know, but like, you know, I think maybe like before all this, I had a much clearer sense of what I was doing, or at least what I thought I was doing. And now I kind of, I feel myself in the midst of a great mystery, and it's like probably fine, but but also,
what is this, Moby Dick?
But, you know, also just as likely not fine. But I think maybe before I would say that what kept me feeling a responsibility towards making poems was feeling a responsibility toward, like, the stories I had and the stories that I'd been told, and putting them somewhere less fallible than human memory. And so they would be taken care of in that way. But now that feels both like too big and too small for how I'm feeling. I'm thinking a lot, Angel, about what you said about how the truth is like right on the other side of the knowing. And I often, like, the poems feel best, they're like most seasoned when I go in and I'm not like kidding myself by thinking I already know what's gonna happen or what's going on, or even like not kidding myself by pretending I already know what I think, you know? So I think going in sometimes with a question, sometimes just with like a sense of curiosity and play will like get me to the poem that feels best and feels the most true, because I happened upon it in the writing of that poem, instead of like coming in to just like try and put you onto something I already know I know, which is nothing. But so I think that, like, and you know, I think that's also what makes poems feel kind of magic, is that there's like, it's not just that you like read a poem and you're like, yes, I agree. You know, there's something where it like hits you closer to the bone in like a place beyond sense. And so I think I feel more equipped to arrive at that place when I like abandon all my knowing and just like strap in and see what's gonna happen. Exactly.
Poet Edmund Chavez would say that he said poems are the definitions for words we don't have.
Yeah.
And so there is a sort of, it's not, you can't pin it down in a way, and it's horizontal.
Yeah.
So you're always walking towards, and you kind of don't ever reach it. The walking towards is the poem.
Yeah.
Reaching it isn't really the thing. It's, you're trying.
Yeah, no, exactly. I feel like my whole life, there's like this one perfect poem that lives in my head that I'm never gonna write. I don't know what it is. I
Man.
just know what it kind of feels
And
like.
sometimes other people will write it.
Yeah, that's the fucked up part. You open a book one day and you're like, damn, that was
I'm
supposed to be my poem.
Honestly, I'm like, bro, beats email. Bro beats email, my dude.
Maybe if I finished more 30-30s, I would have gotten there first. But, you know, it like, I don't know anything about it, about this poem. I just know it's there. It's, again, I love that word Kav used, horizontal. It's there. It's like on the horizon. I can make out like the silhouette of it almost. And every poem I write is like bringing me one step closer to that poem, which then with every step I take closer to it, it moves one step away from me. But that, like, I am trying to spend the rest of my life like inching my way toward that perfect poem, and also never writing it, because how devastating would it be to, like, in my lifetime be like, this is it, it's the poem, now what am I supposed to do?
Please, let me write, like, let me get I think about like Lucille's Blessing the Boats. That would have been, I would have been like, and now I'm a ceramicist.
Right.
On to new things.
Right, that would maybe like make up for all the years I just didn't have any hobbies, but like I might finally learn to drive after I write the perfect poem.
Yeah, 100%.
But you know, it just is like, I feel pulled to it's the thing where it like, it feels like faith almost, you know, where it like, I can't prove that it's there, but I really, really feel something is up.
That's what our Kav, I keep saying Kaveh, do you know Kaveh Akbar? He's a poet, he's our brother, he's our lanky, smelly older brother. And he's brilliant. He is a part, I guess, how do you say this? He's a part of AA. He's a sober alcoholic. I don't know what it, like what you'd say.
He's in recovery.
But he's recovered. But he's in recovery.
He's in recovery. He's like,
what do you say?
I don't actually.
He does. He's sober, and he has been for 8 years. But I don't know what it's called. If you're always an alcoholic, right?
Right.
Like he's an alcoholic.
Correct.
Anyways, so he talks to us. He talks to me a lot about AA, and he said something like, "I don't really fucking know why it works." He's like, "I don't know." He's like, "It's like a car. I know there's a fucking engine in it, but I get in it and I go. Yeah. And I just get the oil checked. I check the tires. I do maintenance on it. But to question it is in a sense, it's like, it's actually antithetical to the divinity of it. And I wonder, kind of, it's like that horizontal thinking. It's like, I don't know that I really need to understand it, to tithe to it, to maintain it.
Yeah.
It also, I get in the car and I go.
Like, even every, like, craft fact I learn about poetry, where, you know, someone will be like, that line is really pleasing to the ear because the consonants and assonants make a really satisfying listening experience where every word feels like it's exactly where it's supposed to be. I'm like, yes, no, thank you for explaining it. Also magic. That's why it sounds so good, you know? So I a little bit feel like that. We're just like, on a curiosity level, I'd love to know why people think it works. And also magic.
It helps for editing, but not for writing.
Yeah, that's, you know, I'm never generating from a place where I'm like, let me throw in some assonance.
I never generate from what I know. Yeah. I generate from what I feel, and I edit from what I know.
Exactly.
Which is, I can't imagine. I honestly think you're supposed to enter a poem with, if you can enter with knowledge. But if you want to leave with wisdom, which is what I want to enter with knowledge and leave with wisdom, then you at some point in the poem are humbled. Yeah. Like you get shown. Yeah. You know, you get shown that you aren't shown.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm always trying to like do a magic trick to myself in the generating, and then on the back end be like, well, what happened is I put the card in my sleeve 100%. And whatever.
Absolutely.
But in the moment, I'm not like, I want this to feel more straightforward, so I should use a Germanic word rather than a Latin word. Like, no.
Every time I have to look up what that even means.
Yeah.
Every time.
Sounds joyless to compose that way. Or maybe it works for some people, but not. I like the magic.
We can take one or two questions from the live people.
Yay! Wait, who are you?
We have a mic too.
Oh, sorry. Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Ben.
Hi.
Thank you both for reading, and thank you for coming out. It was really, this is the first time I've heard poetry read in a long while, and I was really excited to come and hear you both. So I just wanted to hear a little bit, you mentioned a little bit about how you're both friends, but you don't talk poetry a lot. But I just love to hear you both have such like a great like rapport with one another, and I just love to hear about how you like connected.
Aw.
And you know, whether you have worked together creatively before.
We do. It's funny because like she's brilliant, obviously, and I don't turn to you enough poetically. Like I don't even think to do it. Do you know what I'm saying? And I could. You're like totally a resource. We turn to each other, I think, mostly for like dot the I, cross the T type shit, where you're kind of like, you've been to that university before. Did they also try to put you in a weird room or like that kind of thing? So it's more like po biz type stuff. In terms of like generating and craft stuff, which is the best juicy stuff. I think it's so American and terrible, but I think I tend to isolate on accident and then realize I'm alone. But for the biz stuff that I feel like there is an answer for or something, I more so have it in my mind to like, we have a group text, which is like it's like just a bunch of Muslim poets.
Just a bunch of Muslims.
Yeah. And that is a space where we turn to each other a lot, where we're like, hey, has anyone applied to this thing? Can you show me your app so I know if mine looks cuckoo, right? Or that kind of thing.
That's also, in that chat is where Kav told me what a double sonnet is after years where I pretended I knew what it was. And
love that for
finally
us.
the window closed for me to ask anyone else.
Listen, I really do love that for us.
Mm-hmm.
As with most poets who we've been writing for like a weirdly long time for how young we are, it becomes hard to know the beginning or end of where we really met. Like I saw her around for a long time, and then we were friends. And at some point, I'm not really.
I genuinely have no idea.
I really don't know. We
happened.
were both in New York, and then
we fell in love.
Yeah,
Like one day woke up and
friends.
we're in love.
I will say that. You are. This is a compliment, but it's not gonna sound like one. You're not easy to know. People know who you are, but you keep a certain. People aren't around. You're like bye. You know what I mean? You're like in a bathtub.
I was generally in a bathtub.
Literally. And so I'm very aware that it's a privilege to be someone who you will be around. And so I try to move with that gratefulness in how I sometimes I just feel like I don't want to always be at the water cooler, or you know what I mean? Like I don't know about you, but like my email is a fucking albatross around my neck. Like I don't ever want to open it or like think about, you know what I mean?
I haven't checked my email in
Girl,
2 months.
It's like my arch enemy.
Sorry if anyone's emailed
I need to do an ode to email, like the voicemail one, but it would be very like vitriolic.
I think I always kind of want people to kind of wonder if they have the correct email address for
Listen.
me.
And so keeping that in mind, I think also it's like we're the poets that we have, it's like we're each other's safe space to like not be freaked out by the work that we do. It's kind of like, in some ways, it's like all me and Kav do is like eat nachos and like watch stupid things. Like, like he traps me in rooms and shows me the worst television shows, in the world.
I think that's what me and Fatih do.
It's horrible. And he's
She
so,
got you watching a
he's
Discovery
so
of Witches
brilliant.
Yet?
What's up?
Has Fatih got you watching a Discovery of Witches yet?
No.
It's really bad.
Listen, Fatih has terrible taste in TV for someone who is a good TV maker. She writes good shows and then watches terrible ones. Anyway, it is easier to talk to, for me, historically, it's been easier to talk to mentors than it is peers about editing stuff, because I feel like I don't want to burden. But that's probably like not true. You'd probably
It's definitely not true. Please, oh my God, are you kidding me? If you send me a poem, for you, I would check my email. I think it's interesting what you said about mentors, because I think I didn't have, like, wasn't like any poetry grown-ups in my life until
there were too
recently.
many.
I just like didn't know any old poets until like a couple years ago. But so I feel like, I mean, the thing is, it just takes me a really long time to get to a project and to work on it. So it is just that, like, every blue moon I'm like in my friends' inboxes being like, can you help me? It's been 7 years since I wrote anything and I'd forgotten how to do it. But I think because that's how I was, like, everything I know about poetry generally was like taught to me by someone like around my age, and we were like learning it together. Because also like the youth slam programs or whatever that I grew up in, just like it was like changing nonprofits every year. There was always a new coach. A couple years there wasn't a coach. One year like I was the chaperone because I was 18 and everyone else was 17.
Girl.
You know, so like
Hot mess. Just total hot mess.
so it just I've been at this like weird unchaperoned slumber party the whole time, and like the grown-ups just showed up and I almost don't know how to talk to them because I'm like used to the casual rapport of talking to people my age, and then now I have to like with respect address an elder who doesn't text, and so I kind of don't know how to reach them.
I know. I think it is a weird thing where we all think we don't want to bother each other, but like everyone's doing the same thing in a separate room or something. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't bother you, and we're all like watching the same show in a different fucking room. I am grateful that I feel so encouraged to reach out to you about the business aspect of stuff. I don't want to sleep on that stuff because it is the more mercurial, mysterious, cloak and dagger element of what we do.
Yeah.
Because it's not like we're nurses where it's like, if you do these things, this is what will happen. And there's so much more, who knows? And we have the same job and we don't have the same fucking job. You know what I'm saying? So we are kind of like a weird, like, underground union kind of where it's like, don't let them pay you this much when they can pay you that. You know what I mean? Like, we'll tell each other.
Exactly.
Or if somebody sends like a weird kind of racist request to one of us, then we all send it back.
So
we're like, look at this
screenshots
shit.
in that group chat.
And then it's like, good luck booking your Black History thing because none of us are.
We all know.
Yeah, we all know. So we do more of that, but I would love if we wrote poems.
Yeah, please send me a poem. One day, inshallah, I will write a poem again, and then I will happily send it to you.
I make no promises, girl. I'll be right in that bed watching HGTV tonight. That's what I'm gonna be doing. Eating
Same
breadsticks.
Food Network.
Yeah.
Can I have one more question? Oh, or two.
Please.
Yeah.
Anybody. Oh my goodness, go. We can't wait to talk to you, I promise.
I feel so young because I'm just like, it feels kind of like, this is going to go all over the place before I get to the question, but it feels like I'm kind of diving headfirst into something that I know nothing about because I am passionate about poetry, but I know nothing about it. Like when you were talking about how to say stuff, let's talk with your diaphragm. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm only 17, but I do want to like expand my mind, I guess, and get more into it. So how did you find your way through that? How did you find your way through being like young but wanting to get better, I guess?
Thank you for that question.
Also, the first time anyone taught me anything about poetry, I was 17. So there's that I think I learned the word diaphragm in the summer of 2008. I was 17 years old. I was on the DCU slam team. And every time I would get up to read a poem, my voice would shake because I, had never done it before. And I had a coach who was like, if you feel... It's almost, I've never played football or even really watched football, but I imagine when they're like teaching you to like set yourself up so they can't knock you over. I don't really know what it is, but from what I've heard, you kind of want to do this thing where they can't knock you over, whoever they are. It's a little bit like that when you're getting ready to read a poem where you want to feel very sturdy, like on your feet, where like no one could knock you over, including the poem. And so you set your feet, and then your diaphragm, I don't actually know in like real anatomy where it is somewhere. But I was told that when my voice was coming out kind of airy and shaky, it was because I was speaking from my throat when actually I wanted to speak from my stomach. And that's somewhere there is maybe the diaphragm. But it's just when you like let your voice come out of your stomach instead of out of your throat.
Which I know that sounds like weirdly technical, but strangely, wish someone had told me that, because I would go to these when I was in the Ann Arbor Youth Poetry Slam when I was 16 and 17, and it's like a 4-day festival, something like that. Without fail, end of second day, would lose my voice.
Yeah.
And so if you don't, you literally
You'll
will
lose your voice.
You will.
Yeah.
So you it's literally like you talk from the place where it feels most unnatural to talk from.
Yeah.
It feels natural to talk from up here. It feels less natural to talk from,
Yeah.
you know, you straighten your back and you should feel the air at the bottom right here.
Yeah.
If it's right here, you're going to lose your voice.
Yeah. I
And
also
it's
usually, I know I'm doing it when my voice gets deeper when I'm reading. Then I'm like, ooh, it's coming from somewhere in there. When then it's just my regular, like, conversational. If I'm reading a poem and it sounds like I'm, like, chatting to you on the phone about student loan deferment, then I'm not speaking from my diaphragm, you know? So, like, you usually, like, you will feel the difference. You just kind of have to, like, experiment with it a little bit.
We're also weirdly focusing on the diaphragm thing. So to circle out really quick, pivot a bit. I promise you, if you love it, whatever is going to happen is 100% going to happen for you.
Yeah.
You just don't ever leave it. Don't ever stop.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, even if you leave one way of doing it, don't leave it altogether.
Yeah.
If you love poetry, maybe, you know, when I was in slams, when I, you know, from 17 and for too long, from 17 until
Both just grizzled.
21, and then I was like,
Enough.
yeah. I mean, it was fine when we were all youth, but then when it was just like, you know, a 51-year-old guy from Nebraska, like, in a hotel room with, I was like, this isn't what I need for me.
Yeah.
So from 17 to about 21, I slammed, and that was the main mechanism for my poetry to be able to happen and express itself, and for me to find my people. And then I naturally leaned into like an open mic series that was also like a writing, like a workshop series. And then I started curating this reading at the bookstore I worked at, and I wasn't writing as much, but I was curating, and I was reading poetry, and I was introducing these poets, and da-da-da-da. And so no matter what, I just never left it. And then I went to college, and I wasn't, you know, I took English, and I was still writing kind of like on my own. You know, I would take like a poetry class and that, you know, but I wasn't in a scene in the same way I was. And I remember like really feeling down on myself. I remember being like, which is fucking crazy to me now, but I remember being 22 and being like, it's all over.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, and my best years are behind me, you know? Just absurd. I'm 32 now, so it's like been 10 years. Or I'm 33. 11 years.
Love it.
And now I'm just like, oh my God, girl, you started some shit at 16 and you're still doing it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the only common denominator between me, Saf, me and Kav, Dinez, any of these people, we are just the ones who didn't stop. It's not, I don't know if it's that we're more talented, whatever. We just didn't stop. We kept going whatever way felt natural and okay for us. Mm-hmm. So I think whatever way feels natural and okay for you, that you're engaging with poetry in some intentional and specific and continuous way, whatever that looks like for you, is like all you have to do to let 11 fucking years go by and be like, lol, I'm still doing this somehow in this other way. You know, it might feel high stakes, but it's actually super low stakes. It's just like 1 year at a time of just like continuing to do it somehow.
Yeah. And as long as you still love it, because it also, all of the learning, all of the curiosity, like if you just keep that based in what you love and what you're interested in and what you're curious about, then it'll be fine and it won't feel, I often feel overwhelmed by the things I don't know, like, I don't know, scansion, and maybe never will. But it also, like, I will probably get there as soon as I have a context for it in what I love. And, you know, so much of, again, my first years of poetry education, the reason I, like, can talk about the diaphragm and whatever is because that's what I was being taught those years. Because
you were
it was
also in, like, maybe an abusive...
Oh yeah, no, I was in like a weird like borderline cult
camp.
youth slam. It was not a good time.
You were like doing push-ups while reading your poems.
Yeah, no, I like
that don't need to be happening.
Yeah, had like terrible time. Like my core was really strong, but I like was not okay probably. But you know, I didn't know any better at the time. But so it like a lot of that I was learning all that stuff because it was relevant. It was like practical applied knowledge for what I needed to get done, where no one was teaching me about breath control just to know it in theory. I was being taught about breath control because 5 minutes later, when I went to speak on a microphone, I needed to get that wobble out of my voice. And so everything, I don't really have much of a relationship to theory, really. Like everything has to be, I just am like a very practical person. I have a lot of curiosity, but usually the stuff that sticks is the stuff that I know I can use in a tangible way. And so all the stuff with poetry, everything that came up and stuck is because I found a use for it. So even 2 seconds ago, I learned to be Latin and Germanic words, but because someone was able to explain it to me in a way that had to do with what I was already doing. It's not knowledge is cool, knowledge is power. With poetry, I think it's a practice. It's so the stuff that you're learning is going to stick if it has to do with what you're trying to do and the poems you're trying to make and the poems that you love reading. Maybe having a vocabulary for what you like in other people's poems, that's useful knowledge to me. And then it also then translates to maybe what you're trying to do in your own poem. So if you're I really love repetition in other people's poems, then there's a good chance that you're trying to write some poems that have repetition in them, but it's...
Don't worry.
Don't worry. It's gonna be okay.
Don't worry.
Assalamu alaikum both.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for coming out here. It was amazing to hear your talk and your work as well. I guess this is a very vague question, but earlier you were talking about how you're in a group chat with Muslim poets. And my question, as a Muslim woman of color, I'm curious to know how your identity as a Muslim has influenced your work. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. It feels like it has influenced it more recently because I'm explicitly researching my dad's conversion. So I feel like I'm learning all of these things that I had no idea about. But for me, Islam has always been familial. It's it would be similar to being from somewhere. Do you know what I mean? It's just, the food there. You say, Hamakallah when you sneeze, all these different things. So it feels just tied into habits. And I recognize when I'm with someone who I'm spending a significant amount of time with someone or whatever in close proximity with someone who's Muslim, I have noticed that it's I unconsciously cover them with the family blanket. Do you know what I mean? I'm oh, uncle. Inappropriately. It's
Yes, it is
someone.
I, uncle.
Yeah. On a train, I'm my uncle, right? And so I would say it affects my work in that way, where I don't even see it. Because I think it's normal. That's what it is. You know what I mean? That's what it is. So it's usually mirrored back to me from people who don't know. And I say, oh, I guess. And I feel super not. I feel my work is not religious explicitly. And I don't feel I'm experienced as a being by other people religiously. But then when someone's a different religion and they reflect what they're unfamiliar with, I can see it in that way. So I would say that I'm actually not the best answerer for that particular question, because it would be how does blackness affect it's I don't even see it's there, it's everything, it's in everything, it's sewed all up, the seams are hidden. I know more about the way my family practices faith than I know about the way the faith is practiced by all. And I think learning about my dad's Hajj experience made me be oh, I know this much. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I feel a student more than anything else. I do not feel, when I speak about poetry, I feel, for better or for worse, I feel I'm speaking from a place of a bit of authority. I feel comfortable. When I'm speaking about, not God, but when I'm speaking about religion, I feel like I'm not an authority. And I actually take refuge in religion as a place where I can be led. It's actually one of the few spaces where I know that I'm not the expert, and I'm very happy to be led, very happy to almost be mothered, to be, you know what I mean, to be in the flock. It feels good in that sense. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I think it almost. I also kind of don't know how to talk about it because it's so very personal. Where even like I don't know. I think like every Muslim has their own particular Islam, and so it's almost like I don't have vocabulary for it. But Angel, you were talking about like your poems not being perceived as very religious, or I think I like
your poems are experienced that way, but when they're like in the wrong way.
Yeah, I have. I know. I have the experience of, I think, a lot of the times not being like thought of as perceived as particularly religious or whatever, and also I feel so Muslim. It's like I think like blackness is a good parallel because it's like I have never been without it, and so I don't really know how to like explain what being with it is like. It just is my default setting. But it is nice having a community in the way where just like some of my go-to stuff makes sense there. Like whenever I feel like one of my friends in our group chat is about to get some evil eye, I send them a recording of me reading Ayatul Kursi because that's, I believe it works. And also like we think all the same stuff is funny. So it feels good to be so deeply in context in this group of people in a way that I often don't get to feel that in context in the rest of my life, especially because for so much of my life, my experience of and practice of Islam was really just like me by myself trying to figure it out. Like obviously my family and stuff, but it's not, I moved around a lot as a child, and so I did not have the experience of having like a Muslim community that I grew up in, and we didn't like go to a mosque except on Eid, You're kind
of blowing my mind right now. I never really thought about it like that, but
yeah, it was like just me and my business, and then I met y'all, and now it's all our business.
Yeah, I feel like an adult writer, but a child Muslim, always.
Yeah, I'm forever gonna be a baby Muslim.
Yeah, and I think because my experiences of Islam were so I was raised by my dad, me and my sister were, and so all of our experiences in the mosque were just me and my sister at like 6 and 8, like standing in the little line, like praying and trying to follow the women, what they do, you know what I'm saying? And I still feel that way, and I still feel like my dad's on the other side and I'm over here and I'm doing it. We're like, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I feel that way now. Yeah. And I don't, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not complaining. I'm more so saying I had never thought about it that way. Yeah. That I didn't develop it into an adult practice. So I'm still a child Muslim. Yeah. And I, that's probably I feel comfortable with that space. I feel like it's probably better to be a child in most things, lest you think you know it all. Right. And I would say in my poetry there is I don't want to say like a morality, but there is a sense of if it is against the whole, it's wrong. If it's for the whole, it's move towards it, and that's probably Islam. That's probably. Yeah.
Well, I think also the like deep reverence for the word is so Muslim. Like literally, the miracle of Islam is that a man who could not read came down from the mountaintop reciting the most beautiful verse. So it like poetry's so Muslim. You know what I mean? It like
poetry's really Muslim.
Super Muslim.
That's why like Hafez, like all that stuff, like it's
Yeah.
Right on top. It's like the Venn diagram of like poet Muslim is like
Yeah, no, the like most Muslim thing about me is that I write poetry. And so I think even just like the great awe I feel in the face of the word is super Muslim, you know? Even this like mystery poem that lives in my head, whatever, like that somehow, I don't know how to explain it, that feels Muslim too, you know? But it like, I think I feel that in my work, but on the back end, in like my own awe, my own reverence. Usually when my work is engaged with in the context of Islam, it's because someone who is not Muslim is trying to mine my work for information about like the Muslim experience, and then I will always fail at that because, you know?
There's no way to pass that test.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, because also, like, I'm never going to want to write a poem again if I know that someone's going to read my poem and be like, this is what being Muslim is like. Because also, like, my poems are sad, and usually my experience of being Muslim is not as unhappy as I am in my poems, you know? So it just is like, I think, especially living in this country, people are always looking for, like, a neat and tidy answer about Muslims and Islam. And I don't ever want for that answer to be found for that person in
your
my
work.
work, you know?
That's a word.
Can you each share a prompt for us to go home and write?
Yes, usually with this, there's like a bunch of poems that I would ask you to read in preparation for the prompt, but I think maybe it will hold up on its own. Maybe if it doesn't, I'm sorry. But I want you to think about something that you have lost, and then I want you to travel backwards through time until that thing is no longer lost.
Okay. Mine is going to be more annoying because I have to read this poem for you to understand it. Sorry.
We're lucky.
It's not my poem. It's by the one and only Rachel McKibbins.
Woo!
It's called One More Time with Feeling. When I was 19, I stole a gun. The drug dealer next door blitzed out of her skull, didn't see me pull it from the kitchen cupboard. As the California sun sank below the foothills, I haunted the neighborhood, screaming your doomed name. I was ready, a death wish Romeo beneath your bedroom window. Split once, a neighbor threatened to call the cops. I never told you this story, not because I regret what I did, was prepared to do. Those 45 minutes of havoc hunting down your head. Back then, I wasn't shit. Just electrified violence, all fists, piss, and safety pins, an unwed teenage mother with no address. You had parents, freckles, a 3-story house. I'd listen to you spit your angry fiction while I slept in parks and ate from the garbage can. When I learned you were coveting the man I loved, I felt my insides darken, cursed your well-fed royalty, disgusted as grit, got tired of the forgery, wanted all the black-eyed wealth to myself. Bang, you're dead. Wish I could say I've put those days behind me, that I never fall into the steel-weight daydream of a gun's hard lesson. 1995, half my life ago still. Every time you call to bitch about your latest ex-soulmate or DUI, one more kid taken from you by the state, I want to tell you about the only night you survived. When something said, fall asleep, and you did. Crashed hard with a starving bitch and a pistol at the ready, birds still singing in the half daylight. I'll say it here, right now, one more time, with feeling. It was the only moment in this wretched life God was on my side. So this is a poem about the speaker almost killing someone, but the luck of the person falling asleep. So the speaker never found them. This line here, I want to tell you about the only night you survived. Your prompt is, I want to tell you about the only night you survived. The you can be whoever. It can be whatever circumstance. The only night they survived. They might think they survived other nights, but that's really the only fucking night they ever survived.
Wow.
Go forth.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Only her.
World's greatest.
Only her. She'll just be casually like, here's one story that would really be someone else's whole